No one saw the assassin, but this shy Omega saved the feared Alpha King's life. The kingdom of Arendor was a land carved from stone and shadow. Its mountains clawed at the sky like jagged teeth, and the rivers shimmered silver under a sun that rarely lingered. Within this harsh beauty stood the capital, Eloria, a city of marble towers, echoing halls and whispers of fear. Every noble and servant alike knew one truth. The Alpha King Kaelin ruled with power unmatched, and few dared approach his throne unbidden. Kaelin was the kind of king stories were whispered about, strong, precise, and feared. His gaze could silence the rowdiest knight, and his words, sharp as the edges of his ceremonial sword, were law. Rumors said he had slain 3 would-be usurpers with nothing but his bare hands. To the people he was a god among men. To those who served him, he was a storm contained in human form. But on this day, as the wind carried the scent of frost and autumn leaves, a shadow moved silently through the castle corridors. Leora, a shy Omega, padded quietly along the marble floors, her bare feet silent against the cold stone. She had always lived in the background, unnoticed by nobles, servants, and even the guards. Her hair, dark as midnight, fell over her shoulders, hiding her face when she wished. She had learned long ago that invisibility was her protection. Yet today, she felt something she could not name, a flicker of unease that shivered along her spine. The servants whispered about assassins, but Leora didn't need gossip to know danger when it approached. It was in the air, sharp and electric, wrapping around her like a warning. She paused at the top of the grand staircase, glancing down into the great hall. It was crowded with nobles, their laughter echoing against the high-vaulted ceiling. Kaelin sat on his throne, regal and imperious, the silver crown resting on his dark hair. His eyes swept over the crowd, calculating, always alert. Leora's heart pounded. She had seen this man only in passing, yet even from a distance, his presence was a storm. And then, chaos. A scream tore through the hall. A figure lunged from the shadows near the balcony, moving faster than any man should. The assassin's blade glimmered, aimed straight for the Alpha King. Panic erupted. Nobles screamed and ducked behind pillars. Guards shouted, drawing swords, but their movements were sluggish against the assassin's speed. Leora froze. Her instinct screamed, her mind racing. She saw Kaelin, eyes wide for the briefest moment, unprepared. Something inside her flared, a courage she did not know she possessed. She dashed forward, hands trembling but certain. She collided with the king, pushing him to the side just as the assassin's blade sliced the air where he had been. The world seemed to slow. The silver dagger, the startled gasps, the frightened faces. Leora's heart thudded like a drum in her chest, and for a moment she felt the raw weight of the danger. Kaelin's eyes were on her, sharp and stormy, searching, almost as if he could not believe what had just happened. She stumbled back, cheeks burning, unsure whether to hide or flee. But the assassin was already retreating, moving toward the shadows, leaving a faint trail of dark mist in his wake. Who are you?" Kaelin demanded, voice low and commanding, yet tinged with a rare thread of surprise. Leora's mouth opened and closed. She could not answer. Words failed her entirely. She was just a girl, an invisible girl, and yet here she was, having defied death itself to save a man who had always seemed untouchable. "Step forward," Kaelin ordered, his gaze intense. "I need to know your name." Shakily, she stepped closer, bowing her head. "Leora, your majesty," she whispered, almost afraid that speaking too loudly would shatter the fragile moment. The king studied her carefully. There was something in the way she moved, timid, yes, but steady in the face of danger. Something that made him pause, a feeling he had not known in years. Curiosity, edged with caution. "Leora," he repeated, testing the sound of her name. "You have courage." Or perhaps recklessness. Which is it? I felt the danger, she stammered, feeling small beneath his stormy gaze. I did what I had to. Kalen's eyes softened slightly, not often, not for anyone. But he saw her, really saw her. In the great hall of nobles and knights, where most would have panicked or run, she had acted. The assassin had vanished into the night, leaving behind only a faint trace of magic, dark, twisting, dangerous. Kalen noticed it immediately. A sigil burned briefly into the stone floor where the blade had passed. Only he and Leora could sense it, a mark of vengeance from someone who knew the king's deepest vulnerabilities. Follow me, Kalen said abruptly, rising from his throne. Leora's heart skipped. Guards moved to block her path, but he waved them away. She had saved his life. Now he wanted her close, and she knew refusal was impossible. In the quiet corridors above the great hall, Kalen's steps echoed. Leora followed silently, keeping just enough distance to feel safe. The castle seemed larger now, full of hidden shadows and whispered secrets. She felt eyes upon them. Guards curious, servants fearful, but none dared question the Alpha King. You are an Omega, Kalen said, breaking the silence. Shy, quiet, invisible. Yet tonight you chose to act. Why? Leora hesitated, unsure how to explain the instinct she could not name. I did not want anyone to die, she said softly. Especially not you. The king's lips pressed into a thin line. The few had ever spoken to him like that. Her honesty was disarming, though he would not admit it. There was power in her fear and courage combined, a strange paradox that both intrigued and unsettled him. As they reached a small, secluded chamber, Kalen turned to her. The assassin knew where to strike. Someone inside this castle wants me dead. His voice was steady, yet Leora felt the weight of his trust, rare and dangerous. I saw him. I tried to, Leora began, but Kalen cut her off. Do not stop speaking, he said. I need to know everything. No detail is too small. For the first time, Leora felt her silence dissolve. Words flowed, trembling but urgent, as she described what she had sensed. The flicker of shadows, the unnatural swiftness of the attacker. Kalen listened, eyes narrowing. He did not speak until she finished, then nodded once. You may think yourself weak, he said, but tonight you proved that strength comes in many forms. Do not underestimate yourself, Leora. The Omega's heart fluttered, warmth spreading through her chest. She had always felt invisible, unimportant, yet here she was, recognized, valued, even by the king himself. Yet, as she looked into Kalen's piercing eyes, she realized that recognition came with danger. Being noticed by him was both an honor and a curse. Kalen's hand hovered briefly near the dagger at his belt, not out of distrust of her, but caution. Rest, he ordered.
Tomorrow you will tell me more. The sigil...
The magic. It is not ordinary. It is a warning. Whoever sent the assassin wants more than my death. They want fear to rule this castle. Fear. Leora understood it well. It had been her companion for as long as she could remember. But now it was entwined with something else, purpose. She had been invisible all her life, and yet, tonight, her small action had altered the fate of a kingdom. The night deepened outside the castle windows. The wind whispered against the stone towers, like a messenger of secrets yet to be revealed. Leora sat on the edge of a small bed in the chamber, staring at her trembling hands. Kalen's words echoed in her mind. Strength comes in many forms. But could she, a shy Omega, be enough to face what was coming? And then she noticed it, a faint dark sigil shimmering briefly in the corner of the chamber. Only she could see it, glowing softly on the cold stone. It pulsed, like a heartbeat, sinister yet alive. A vision flickered before her eyes. Kalen, lying in a pool of darkness, the assassin's blade poised above him. She gasped, clutching the blanket to her chest. The danger was not over. It had only begun. Kalen, standing silently by the window, turned his gaze toward her. He had seen the flicker too, and in that silent exchange, Leora understood that their fates were now intertwined. She had saved him tonight, but the shadows that stalked the castle would not rest, and neither would the curse that waited quietly in the blood of kings. Outside, the wind howled through the towers, carrying whispers of death and betrayal. Inside, a shy Omega and a feared Alpha King faced the uncertain dawn, tied together by courage, instinct, and the fragile threads of trust, and somewhere in the darkness the assassin watched, waiting for the next move. The morning sun pierced through the tall windows of Aloria Castle, but its golden light could not warm the cold marble halls. Kalen, the Alpha King, walked alone along the corridors, his boots echoing against the stone. The echoes seemed louder today, as if the castle itself was holding its breath after last night's chaos. Behind him, footsteps followed quietly. Leora, the shy Omega who had saved his life, was now ordered to stay close. She had wanted to retreat to her usual quiet corners, to hide again. But Kalen's command left no room for choice. She moved carefully, feeling the weight of every glance and whisper from servants who could not yet decide whether to fear her or pity her. "Why am I being brought here?" she asked softly, her voice barely above a whisper. Kalen's dark eyes, sharp as blades, did not turn to look at her. "Because you are no longer invisible," he said. "Tonight, someone will try again. If I am to survive, I need someone who can sense danger before it arrives." Leora swallowed hard. She had never thought of herself as brave. She was timid, quiet, and unnoticed. But Kalen's words stirred something inside her, a sense of purpose, and also fear. She could not deny the truth. If she failed, the king could die. As they reached the council chamber, Kalen gestured for her to stand by the window. "Do not speak unless spoken to," he ordered, then turned to the council of nobles already gathered. Leora's eyes darted from face to face. There were knights in shining armor, robed advisors, and ladies of the court with sharp eyes and sharper tongues. All looked at her as if she were a curious, delicate creature who might break at any moment. But Leora did not break. She had no choice but to stand tall, though her heart pounded fiercely in her chest. The council's head advisor, Lord Serin, cleared his throat. "Your Majesty, the attack last night was unprecedented. An assassin within the castle walls. How could such a breach happen?" Kalen's jaw tightened. "It was not a failure of my guards. It was precision. Someone knew my movements, my habits. Someone wants me dead." "And they will try again," whispers ran through the room. Nobles exchanged nervous glances. But Kalen's gaze fell on Leora. "You," he said. "Stay close. Watch, listen, anticipate." Her heart skipped. The king's command made her both anxious and strangely honored. She was no longer invisible. Her life was intertwined with the Alpha King's fate. After the council ended, Kalen led Leora through the quiet corridors of the upper castle. The walls were lined with tapestries depicting the history of Arendor. Kings and queens, battles and victories, blood and glory. Leora's fingers brushed against the embroidered scenes, tracing stories she had only heard in whispers. "Do you understand the danger you face?" Kalen asked suddenly, his voice low, almost a growl. I think so," Leora replied. "I know that if I fail, something terrible could happen." The intensity of his gaze made her heart flutter. "This is not a game. Your presence here changes nothing about who I am, but it changes everything about who you might become. Understand that?" She nodded, swallowing hard. "I understand." For hours, Kalen moved through the castle with her at his side. They checked the gates, the towers, and the secret passages only a few in the castle knew existed. Leora's senses were on edge, every shadow a potential threat, every whisper a possible warning. And then it happened. A faint sound, almost like the scraping of a blade across stone, came from the library. Leora froze, her breath catching in her throat. Kalen's hand instinctively went to the hilt of his sword, but he did not draw it. Instead, he observed her. "You sense it," he said quietly. She nodded. Someone is here." Together, they entered the library. The room was empty, but the air felt thick, heavy with the presence of someone who had been there and left only moments ago. Leora's eyes fell on the shelves, and she noticed a book lying on the floor, its pages open to a sigil she had seen the night before. "The mark," she whispered. Kalen examined it, his fingers tracing the dark lines. "This is no ordinary magic," he said. "It is the work of someone trained, someone who knows the bloodline of Arindor and the curses that protect it. You must remember this mark. It will appear again, and you must recognize it." Leora nodded, heart pounding. She had never been trained in magic or combat, yet somehow she understood the urgency. She was part of this now, part of the shadows that threatened the kingdom, and part of the light that might protect it. Days passed, and Kalen continued to bring Leora closer into the inner workings of the castle. He taught her to watch for signs of danger, to sense the slightest changes in a room, the smallest shifts in the behavior of people around her. Leora learned quickly, her instincts sharpening with every passing hour, yet it was not just danger that grew between them. It was something quieter, softer, but no less powerful. Kalen had always ruled through fear, but he found himself watching Leora in moments when she thought he was not looking. He saw her small hands trembling as she steadied herself against a balcony railing. He saw the careful way she moved through the hallways, alert but composed. And he realized that her courage, though quiet, was more difficult to master than the strength of any soldier. Leora, in turn, began to see beyond the fearsome reputation of the Alpha King. She saw the way his eyes softened when he thought no one was watching, the way his shoulders relaxed when alone in the corridors. She saw the loneliness beneath the armor of his command, and it stirred something tender within her. But their bond was not free from tension. Every glance carried unspoken questions. Every brush of hands as they moved through the castle caused hearts to race. They were drawn to each other, yet both aware that the dangers around them could shatter the fragile trust they were building. One evening, as the sun set and the castle shadows lengthened, Kalen brought Leora to the highest tower. From there, the entire city of Aeloria stretched below them, a tapestry of gold, silver, and shadow.
"Do you see all of this?" Kalen asked, his voice unusually soft. "All of this belongs to me,
and yet it is not enough to protect me. Fear is always one step behind." Leora's hand hovered near the railing, gripping it tightly. "Then maybe you do not have to face it alone." Kalen looked at her, his dark eyes holding hers. For a moment, the weight of his throne, his duty, and his fear seemed to lift. He allowed himself a small, unguarded smile. "Perhaps," he said, and the word hung between them like a fragile promise. Their moment was broken by a sudden noise from below, the faintest whisper of movement, a shadow that did not belong. Leora tensed immediately, sensing the danger before anyone else. Kalen drew his sword, his posture sharp and commanding. "They are coming," Leora said, her voice steady despite the fear rising in her chest. Kalen's eyes narrowed. "Stay close," he ordered. "Do not stray. This is not a game anymore." The castle held its breath as the sound grew closer. A shuffle of feet, a whisper of silk, the metallic glint of a blade catching the dying light. Leora's heart pounded, but she did not move. She had learned to control her fear, to channel it, to sense the movements of the unseen. Then, as quickly as it had begun, the sound vanished. The corridors were empty, the shadows still. Kalen lowered his sword slightly, but his gaze remained sharp, scanning every corner. "You sensed it," he said quietly, turning to her. Leora nodded. "They were close." "PA. Too close." Kalen studied her, a storm of emotions crossing his face. Pride, worry, admiration. "You are remarkable, Leora. More than I realized." Her cheeks warmed. She had never been praised like this, and yet the words carried weight beyond simple kindness. They carried trust, recognition, and an unspoken bond that neither could deny. But even as their connection grew, the danger remained. The assassin had not been seen, had not left a trace beyond the sigils. Whoever was behind the attacks was clever, patient, and deadly. Leora realized with a shiver that this was only the beginning. That night, as she lay in the small chamber near the tower, she could not sleep. The images of the assassin, the dark sigil, and the Alpha King's near death haunted her mind. She understood now that her life was no longer her own. She was tied to Kalen, to his survival, and to the shadows that threatened the kingdom. Outside the window, the wind whispered through the towers. Leora pressed her hand to her chest, feeling the rhythm of her own heartbeat. She had chosen to act once, to save the Alpha King's life. And now she understood that every choice she made from this moment would shape not just her destiny, but the destiny of all Erendor. And somewhere in the darkness, unseen and patient, the assassin watched. The game had only begun. The castle of Aeloria was quiet in the early morning, yet the silence carried weight. Even the servants moved with caution, aware that danger lingered in every shadow. Leora, the shy Omega, had learned not to take a single step without attention. The night's rest had been restless. Visions of the assassin and the dark sigil haunted her sleep. Kalen, the Alpha King, moved through the halls with his usual precision, but today there was tension in his movements. He did not speak much, his mind heavy with thoughts of betrayal and the dark forces that threatened his throne. Leora followed, quieter than ever, yet alert. Her senses had sharpened beyond what she thought possible. She could feel the faintest stirrings of magic, the tiniest shift in the castle's air, and the presence of those who should not be there. "Leora," Kalen said, his voice low, "come with me. Today, you must see something few have ever witnessed." They descended a narrow spiral staircase, lit only by flickering torches. The air grew colder as they moved deeper into the castle. Leora's breath came in small, careful bursts. She had seen much in the castle before, but something about this place felt ancient, almost alive. They stopped in front of a massive wooden door carved with symbols that seemed older than the kingdom itself. Kalen pushed it open, revealing a chamber filled with scrolls, books, and artifacts that pulsed with quiet energy. "This," Kalen said, gesturing to the room, "is the archive of the royal bloodline. It contains secrets no one else in the kingdom knows, and within these walls lies the truth about the curse that shadows my family." Leora's eyes widened. "A curse," she whispered. Kalen nodded. "Generations ago, a sorcerer, betrayed and executed, placed a spell upon my ancestors. It is not merely death that it brings. It is betrayal, fear, and the awakening of a darkness that grows with every misstep." He reached for a scroll, rolling it carefully. The parchment was brittle, lined with intricate symbols and faint blood-red stains. Leora stepped closer, drawn to the strange, powerful energy radiating from it. "This curse," Kalen continued, "cannot be broken by force. Only trust, loyalty, and courage can contain it. The assassin who attacked me is connected to it. They have been empowered by the same dark magic that haunts my bloodline. Leora shivered, understanding the gravity of their situation. She had saved him once, but the darkness that stalked Kalen was patient. It would not be so easily defeated. "You must know," Kalen said, his gaze locking with hers, "that your presence here is dangerous. You could be a target simply for standing near me." "I understand," she whispered. I do not care. I will do what I must to protect you." Kylan's eyes softened slightly, though he did not speak. The chamber seemed to hold its breath, the ancient magic sensing her determination. Leora felt a strange warmth despite the cold, a connection to something larger than herself, as if the castle itself acknowledged her courage. They spent the day in the archives. Kalen showed her scrolls that detailed the lineage of Arindor, maps of secret passages, and records of past attacks, some successful, some thwarted. Leora absorbed it all, her mind racing, remembering every detail, every symbol, every shadow. She realized she was no longer just a servant or an observer. She was a protector, a guide through the unseen dangers that threatened the Alpha King. But as the day passed, the closeness between them grew. Leora noticed small things. The way Kalen's eyes softened when he thought she wasn't looking. The rare moments of quiet laughter he allowed himself in her presence. And Kalen noticed how her fear never diminished her courage, how her soft voice could speak truths that few dared to say aloud. The leaves shimmered with gold and red, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of autumn. For a moment, the world outside the castle walls seemed peaceful, as if untouched by shadows. "Why did you save me?" Kalen asked suddenly, his voice softer than it had ever been. Leora froze. I could not let you die," she whispered. It was instinct. I never thought I could be brave, but—" Her voice faltered, and she looked down, unsure how to continue. "But?" Kalen prompted, gently. "But I care," she admitted, her voice trembling. "I care about your life, more than I thought I could care about anyone." Kalen's expression softened, and for the first time he stepped closer, reducing the space between them. "You are not like anyone I have ever known, Leora. You are extraordinary." Her heart raced, and she felt a warmth spread through her chest. But before either could say more, a sudden chill ran through the garden. Leora's instincts screamed danger. She turned, eyes wide, and saw the faint shimmer of the assassin's magic, a dark figure at the edge of the garden, watching, waiting. "They are here," she whispered, tense and alert. Kalen's hand went to his sword, his stance protective. "Stay behind me," he commanded. The figure did not move, only watching. Leora sensed the darkness in the air, the lingering curse that fueled the assassin's power. It was a warning, a challenge, and she knew that facing it would require every ounce of courage she possessed. "You will have to face them," Kalen said, his voice low. "And you will not be alone. I will stand with you. But you must trust yourself." Leora nodded, her fear tempered by resolve. She had come so far from the timid girl who had once moved unnoticed through the halls. Now, she was a part of the kingdom's fate, a shield against the darkness. The assassin did not strike. Instead, a whisper carried on the wind, barely audible, like a snake coiling in the grass. The bloodline must fall. They seek to end the lineage, to awaken the curse fully. We must move quickly. They returned to the castle, moving through hidden passages that Kalen had never revealed to anyone else. Leora followed closely, her senses alert to every sound, every shadow. She felt the pulse of danger, the pull of ancient magic, and the unspoken bond growing between them. In the quiet of the hidden corridor, Kalen stopped. "You have done well, Leora," he said, his tone almost vulnerable. I I did not think I could trust anyone so completely. Leora looked at him, her voice barely a whisper. You can trust me. I will not fail you. A pause hung between them, filled with unspoken feelings and the weight of what they had both endured. Leora realized in that moment that her courage was not just about saving him. It was about standing beside him, sharing the burden, and accepting the danger because she chose to. As night fell, they returned to the private chamber near the tower. Leora's hands trembled slightly as she settled on the bed, but her mind was clear. She had learned much, faced shadows, and grown stronger. Kaelin stood by the window, watching the dark horizon. Tomorrow we must confront the assassin, he said quietly. But tonight, rest. You have earned it. Leora nodded, but sleep did not come easily. The vision of the assassin lingered in her mind. The dark sigil, the threat, and the knowledge that the curse could strike at any moment. She understood now that the path ahead was dangerous, filled with uncertainty and shadows, but for the first time, she did not feel completely alone. Kaelin's presence was a strange comfort. He was feared, powerful, and often unapproachable, yet beside her, he was also a man who trusted her, relied on her, and shared the weight of the kingdom's dangers. And in the quiet moments between fear and duty, Leora felt a fragile warmth growing between them, a connection neither had expected, but both could not ignore. As she drifted into a restless sleep, the wind whispered through the castle towers once more. Somewhere in the shadows, the assassin prepared their next move, patient and deadly. But this time, Leora would not be unprepared. She had seen the darkness, faced it, and learned that courage came in many forms, quiet, observant, and steadfast. The bond between the shy Omega and the feared Alpha King had deepened, forged in danger, trust, and the shared burden of survival. And as the night stretched on, a single thought echoed in Leora's mind. The battle was far from over, but together they might yet survive the shadows that sought to consume them. And beyond the walls the assassin watched, patient, calculating, waiting for the perfect moment to strike again. The night hung heavy over Aloria Castle, thick with mist and the quiet tension of unspoken dangers. Leora stood beside Kaelin in the highest tower, her hands gripping the cold stone railing. Below, the city slept unaware, while the shadows of the assassin and the curse circled like silent predators. Kaelin's eyes scanned the darkness, the familiar weight of command settling across his shoulders. Yet tonight there was more than duty in his gaze. There was trust. He glanced at Leora, and she felt her heart skip. She had never seen him so open, so unguarded, even for a moment. Tonight, he said quietly, we face the one who has haunted my family for generations, the one who seeks to awaken the curse fully. Leora swallowed, steadying herself. I am ready, she whispered, though her voice betrayed the flutter of fear beneath her calm. She was no longer just a timid Omega. She was a protector, a shield, and a guide. Someone Kaelin relied on as much as he had relied on his own strength. The distant echo of footsteps carried on the wind. Leora tensed. The assassin had returned, drawn by the pulse of the bloodline and the challenge of the two who now stood together. Kaelin's hand rested on his sword hilt, but he did not strike. He did not move until Leora's senses confirmed what he already suspected. The enemy was near. They are coming, she said, pointing toward the mist that clung to the castle walls. Kaelin nodded. Stay close. Watch me, but do not be afraid. The figure emerged slowly from the shadows, cloaked in black, the glint of a blade catching the moonlight. Leora's eyes widened, not in fear, but in clarity. She saw the magic radiating from the assassin, a dark, twisting energy tied to the curse itself. She stepped forward instinctively, guided by the vision she had seen before. The blade poised above Kaelin, the danger he might not survive. Kaelin raised his sword, and the air seemed to crackle with tension. "You will not harm this kingdom," he said, voice low and commanding. "I will not allow it." The assassin moved faster than the eye could follow, striking toward the king. Leora's heart raced, but her mind was sharp. She stepped into the path, positioning herself between the assassin and Kaelin, using her presence as both shield and signal. Kaelin deflected the first strike, the blade sparking against his sword. Leora's eyes followed the movement, sensing the rhythm of the fight, the spaces between strikes, the faintest hints of weakness in the attacker. She knew Kaelin's strength, but she also knew the assassin's power was not ordinary. It was fueled by the same darkness that had haunted the royal line. "You must trust yourself," Kaelin said, as if reading her thoughts. "We are stronger together." Leora nodded, feeling a warmth in her chest despite the danger. She focused on the assassin's patterns, guiding Kaelin with subtle gestures, silent movements, and instinctive awareness. Slowly, step by step, they cornered the figure, moving with precision, a strange harmony of strength and perception. And then, in a moment of stillness, the assassin faltered. Kaelin's sword found its mark, not to kill, but to disarm. The cloak fell back, revealing a familiar face. One Kaelin had trusted years ago, a knight who had sworn loyalty and yet had been twisted by jealousy and dark magic. "Why?" Kaelin demanded, his voice trembling between anger and disbelief. "Why betray your king?" The knight's eyes were clouded, haunted. The bloodline, the curse. It promised power. I was blinded. I thought I could control it, but it controls us all. You cannot escape what is written in your family's veins. Leora stepped closer, sensing the vulnerability beneath the darkness. "It does not have to control us," she said softly. "We choose our actions. Courage and loyalty can outweigh fear." The knight's expression wavered, the dark energy around him flickering like dying embers. Kaelin lowered his sword slightly, and Leora moved closer still, placing a hand on the knight's arm. The warmth and steadiness of her presence seemed to calm the storm within him. "You can choose redemption," she said. "You can undo the harm without losing yourself entirely." For a tense moment, the air was heavy with silence. Then, slowly, the knight dropped his weapon, kneeling. The dark energy dissipated like smoke in the wind, leaving the night quiet once more. Kaelin sheathed his sword, though his gaze remained guarded. "You have saved more than me tonight," Kaelin said, turning to Leora. "You have saved this man from himself, and perhaps you have saved the kingdom." Leora felt a flush of relief, but also of exhaustion. She had faced fear, darkness, and the weight of destiny, and yet she still felt her heart pounding, not from terror, but from the bond that had grown between her and the Alpha King. Kaelin extended his hand, an unusual gesture for the king so feared. "Come," he said. "We must ensure the curse is contained." Together they returned to the archives, examining the ancient scrolls and symbols once more. Leora traced the lines of the sigils, guided by intuition and the knowledge she had gained over the past days. Slowly, the curse's power was diminished, sealed by the courage, loyalty, and trust that both she and Kaelin embodied. "You have changed me," Kaelin admitted quietly as they worked side by side. "I was once a king of fear. Now I see strength and trust, in gentleness, in bravery not born of steel." Leora looked at him, heart full. "And you have changed me," she replied softly. "I was timid, invisible, but now I know my courage matters, and I know that standing beside you is where I belong." A warmth spread between them, unspoken but understood. Their bond, forged in danger and shadow, was now unbreakable, not by magic, not by power, not even by fear. As dawn broke, the first light touched the towers of Aloria. The city below awoke to another day, unaware of the battles fought in the shadows, the courage of a shy Omega, and the strength of a feared Alpha King. Leora and Kaelin stood together, watching the sunrise, knowing that the darkness had not vanished entirely, but that together they could face whatever came.
"You are remarkable," Kaelin said, his voice low, almost a whisper.
"Do you know that?" Leora smiled, her eyes meeting his.
"I know."
"But so are you. And together, we are stronger than the shadows." The wind carried their words across the castle, gentle yet firm, a promise to each other and to the kingdom. Somewhere beyond the walls, unseen, other threats still lingered. But tonight, the light had returned. Tonight, trust had triumphed over fear, courage over darkness. And Leora, once a timid Omega, stood beside the Alpha King, not as a servant, but as an equal, a protector, and the keeper of hope. And in that quiet moment, high above the city, the castle seemed to exhale. Shadows still lingered, but they were no longer the masters of fate. The future remained uncertain, but one truth shone brightly. Together, they could face whatever came next.